So I'm just going to open up a blank drawing. If I were to have had my template up to date, right, I would click on templates and I would go to my template, open that up. If you have your templates, then that is helpful. Any questions on XREFs before we get going? Not a bad system, right? After you do it a few times, you'll get the hang of it. Again, the idea behind the final project, and I'll talk about it when I release the project, is that you use external references to construct it, right? The file structure. So that'll be one kind of pretty important thing about the final. All right, so let's talk about elevations. And before we get going on elevations, right, I just want to show you, and in the book there are some images, but I want to show you what an elevation is, right? So maybe you all kind of know what an elevation is. I'm going to just pull up a couple images here. And these are sort of rendered. I think that maybe having them rendered, meaning there's color on them to make them realistic, right, gives a pretty good sense of what we're trying to capture with an elevation. And, oh boy. Okay. So here's some, well, pretty famous house, right, the Farnsworth House, which apparently is almost flooded right now. I guess the water's been creeping up. Anyway. So an exterior elevation, it's a drawing of, you know, a home, we'll say a home because we're looking at homes, or a building or a piece of architecture from the outside. Okay, so here are some really good examples of an exterior elevation, right? All of these are exterior elevations. These are all, there's line work and rendered images. Okay, they really want us to save, oh boy. To figure out my password would be, you have a combination of line work and color on this one, right? But for our purposes, we're just kind of looking at the line work. So if you were to stand in front of your house, right, on the north, south, east, and west sides, right, whatever you see when you stand in front of your house, you would draw with regard to an elevation. And you'll have things that are going to be kind of really close to you, right? So we're going to sneak around this. Hold on. Let me snip that. I don't like it says open photo every time there we go. So, and we might be able to zoom in a little easier with this. Okay, there we go. Okay. So you're going to see things that are close to you. So for example, you know, I stand in front of this house right here, and I very clearly, from the shadow lines and from the the thickness of the line weight isn't as evident here, but we'll talk about that. But I can very clearly see that this is the front, right? This is the piece of the house that's closest to me, right? If I were to walk towards the house, this is the piece of the house that I would touch first. And then it grades back. Here's the second closest to me. Here's the third closest to me. And this piece is the furthest away, right? So they grade backwards, right? Same thing here. I can tell from the shadow lines and kind of how dark and light things are, right, that this is closest to me and that this piece is furthest away, okay? So that's one thing I wanted to show you, right? We're going to draw everything that we see on the elevation. This is a really nice elevation, actually. The one we'll draw today is not super nice. Anyway, but it's a really good graphic of what you would see on an elevation, okay? For an interior elevation, and in fact, here are some good interior elevations. So I'm just going to grab these. We'll snip those. Right? The idea is the same behind an interior elevation, right? Although when you are creating interior elevations, you draw things as if you were kind of standing in the middle of the room, right? And I determine the elevation by, like, this could be, I don't know the direction I'm facing, what direction I'm facing. That was north.
West, I think.
Okay. So I'm facing west. So here's, this is one elevation, right? And well, I don't want to say the west elevation because we'll get into that. So So here's one elevation, and I would draw from wall to wall, right? To wall edge to wall edge. And I would draw from floor to ceiling. So that entire piece of wall, anything that was on there, I would draw. And then I would turn this way, right? And I would look this way. And from wall to wall, that would be one interior elevation. And just drawing what's on the wall, right? I could draw things that are kind of interacting with the wall, right? So if there's furniture and there's like a copy machine and a table over there and a window and a door, and you know, draw all of those items, okay? But that's the idea between an interior elevation. So you're standing in a space looking at a specific wall in a specific direction, and you're going to draw what's on that wall, okay? An exterior elevation, you're standing outside a piece of architecture like a house or a building, right? And you are going to draw what you see on the facade of that building in that elevation, okay? Now, I look at these elevations, and they're really nice. Some things that I notice about them, well, number one, we have kind of a wall outline or designation, right? This really thick outline is showing the boundary of the extent of the drawing, right? So from wall to wall, okay? It's showing the floor, and it's showing the ceiling line. And then it's showing the objects on the the wall that we're looking at. So in this case, there's a door there, and it looks like maybe a shower or something on the floor, like a shower or something. What is what is different in this drawing than maybe other drawings is that this has somewhat of a sectional view, like the elevation is cutting something. Like maybe they took the elevation and it was through the shower, right? So we see the cut line of maybe the shower enclosure here, right? Here's another good elevation. We see the outline of the wall, right? So from wall to wall, and we see all the information on that wall. So we have doors, and we have windows, and we have a bench, and all that good stuff. Okay, we even have little scale people here, which is kind of nice, right? In rendered drawings. All right, I'm gonna close that out. So before we actually get into creating our elevations, I want to talk about a couple of drawing things we're going to have to worry about in AutoCAD when we draw them, okay? I want to talk about layers, and I want to talk about how we assign layers, because it's a little bit different than how you are used to doing things, okay? So I'm going to go to Home. And I want to I'll create a little drawing up here, and we'll talk about something first. Okay. So if I have a building and it kind of looks like this, maybe it comes along something like this, right? And I have a door back here, and I have a door right here, and I have a double door right here, right? Maybe I have a window right there. We will take those lines out of there. Okay. And we'll say that this is north. Okay. So if I wanted to draw an elevation of this building, right, and I was a little person kind of standing right here, right, looking this direction, okay, the extent of my elevation, I could illustrate kind of with a line, a crooked line, right? And, well, let me take this a little bit further away. Make it look actually like it should. Okay. So I'm going to draw some little arrows like that. So we're looking that direction, right? So here's somewhat my elevation, right? So I'm standing right here, I'm looking at the building. The elevation that I'm going to draw is this. So everything that I see, so I'm going to draw all of that. You know, this wall won't really show an elevation, right? But we'll just, for the sake of saying it's part of the elevation, we're going to draw everything that we kind of see on this face of the building, okay? So when I draw this, and we'll do this in AutoCAD as well, right? I'll kind of find a way to draw some lines to kind of indicate where all of these things happen, right? I'll draw a floor plane. I'll draw a ceiling plane, okay? And then I'm going to locate kind of where these elements occur on that floor plan, right? So there's my door, and it looks somewhat like that. Here's my other door. Oop, it doesn't go the entire of the thing of the wall, the width of the wall. There's my other door, and then I have my third door back here, okay? All right, so that's how I'm somewhat kind of thinking about drawing my elevations, all right? But just like we were kind of talking, okay, in elevations, things that are closest to us are the heaviest pen weight, right? Things that are furthest away are the lightest. So we're going to do light, and we're going to do heavy over here, okay? So obviously line weights have to do with our layers, okay? Because layers assign color, and color is associated with line weight in AutoCAD, right? We've talked about that a lot during the semester, okay? So if we were to think about in terms of things that are closest to us or heaviest, these items would be the heaviest pen weight, okay? These would be a medium pen weight, and this would be the lightest pen weight, okay? So I want you to start thinking of elevations a little differently than you do floor plans. And I want you to think of them in terms of graphics instead of architectural element, okay? And the reason I want you to think of them in terms of graphics instead of architectural element is that if we were to group our architectural elements, like the doors, door, and we were to put them on the same layer like we do in floor plans, right, they would have all the same color, right? Because you group things in floor plans according to architectural element, so they go on A-door, right? And the door layer has a green layer color association. So if we grouped all of these architectural elements according to what they are, they would all be green, right? And that means that the pen weight would be green, green, green. It wouldn't be heavy, medium, light, right? Does that kind of maybe make sense where I'm heading with that? So what instead we want to do, instead of grouping things according to architectural element, we want to say this is heavy, this is medium, and this is light. This is red, this is, cyan, and this is gray. So we're going to start thinking of things in terms of graphics instead of architectural element, okay? And what that means is that instead of grouping and putting our objects on our elevations on layers like A-wall or A-door or whatever, we're going to have some generic layers we're going to create. A-elev-heavy. A-elev-medium. A-elev-light. We're going to have about 5 or 6 of these. A-elev-fine. Actually I skipped one, sorry. Light. Medium, thin, light, and fine. And we'll also have one called elev-pat and A-elev-pat-01. Okay? These can also be designated like you could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or a 7. All right, so we're going to create these layers, and we're going to give them the colors associated with heavy, medium, thin, or I think I'm getting these mixed up. I think it's fine. Heavy, medium, light. No, that's thin, heavy, medium, light, thin, and fine. Heavy, medium, light. So we'll create these layers. There's 7 of them, okay? A-elev heavy, medium, light, thin, fine, pattern, pattern 01, okay? And instead of assigning objects in our elevations according to architectural element, right, meaning all doors would be green, which means all doors would have the same pen weight, we're going to make things that are closest to us, regardless of what they are, heavy. And things that are medium, between the heaviest and the lightest, medium. And the things that are furthest away from us, light. So we're thinking about these things in terms of graphics as opposed to architectural element, okay? Now, there are going to be, so we have heavy, medium, light, but then we sort of have this subset system, okay? Meaning I have this elevation that I've drawn, right? I draw the doors here, door here, door here. This is going to be very heavy, right? So, you know, kind of the outline here will be the most heavy. And the door will be outlined kind of heavy, okay? And then we have kind of a medium-ish line weight here, and a medium-ish line weight for the door, right? And then we have a very fine line weight back here, right? So heavy, heavy, medium, and fine. But not everything on that front elevation will be heavy. It's like if you did everything in yellow, everything would be super dark and it would be a big blob of dark lines and it wouldn't look very good, okay? So the general rule, heavy, medium, light, okay? But within each elevation, so if I were to look at this part of the elevation, which is this part right here, right? If I were to kind of draw it over here, sorry, I know I'm blocking some of you, but I'd have a door kind of right here, right? The outline of kind of the face of that building would be the heaviest object. And likely if there were a roof of some sort, right? If we had a roof of some sort, that would be kind of a very heavy line weight, okay? And then we're gonna start looking at the items on that elevation. Like we have a door, and then we have a window, and then we have kind of some lines to create a door swing, right? So things with on a specific elevation will also grade down from heavy, medium, and light, okay? So heaviest will be kind of the outline. Medium will be the architectural elements on there, right? So we have a door, and we have a window. It's hard to see with this pen, obviously. And then heavy, medium, and then things like detail will be super light. That's my super light line right there, the dots, right? So elevations grade back, heavy, medium, light, and then within each elevation we have heavy, light, and medium kind of objects, right? And again, the same rules apply. Things that are going to be closest to you will have the heaviest pen weight. Things that are farthest away would have the lightest pen weight. And things that have the heaviest, have a lot of detail, kind of the main detail will be heavy, and then the kind of maybe more nondescript detail will be lightest, okay? You'll get used to it. You'll get used to it. Heavy, medium, light, fine, right? But let's draw a few things and maybe it'll help make sense a little bit, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create some layers, and these would be good to have in my layer dialog box, right? So I click on layer properties, and I click new, and we'll call this A elev dash heavy, right?
Do you put the O1 on too if you do the heavy?
You could do that. That one is up to you. Some people like to use numbers instead of heavy, medium, light, so they know that 1 is heavy and 5 is light. So that one's kind of up to you, personal preference. Okay, so then I would do my heaviest line weight as red, right? And then I'm going to create a new layer. A elev medium. And usually my rule with line weights and layers is that I step down 2 colors to create a different layer color, right? Or differentiation. So if red is my heaviest, then green's going to be my medium. Okay? If you want a bigger differentiation, that's fine. You could even go down to cyan, right? Just keep your steps kind of consistent so you see a consistency in the, you know, your line weights. So I'm going to actually do 3. I'll do 3. So cyan, heavy, medium, we'll do A, elev, heavy, medium, thin, light. Anyway, you guys get the idea, right? So heavy, medium, elev, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 is better, right? Heavy, medium, how did I do it there? Light, we'll do light, that's fine. Light is white, and then A elev dash thin. So white, and then we'll go to gray, right? And then we'll do a fine one, and with the fine, A elev dash fine, we'll go down into the gray tones, right? So maybe 251. So we started at red, we went to cyan, and then we went to white, and then we went to gray, and then we went down to 251, And then we'll do a couple of pattern ones, ALIV dash PATT, which will be a hatch layer. Pattern layer is a hatch. And we'll make that 253. And then we'll have one more hatch, ALIV dash pat dash 01, whatever, right? And that will be the lightest one of all, right? So 254. So from red to cyan to white to gray to the gray tone, right? To another gray tone to another gray tone. And they all grade down, okay? All right, so we have our layers established. And if you have, let me open up another file here.
Which one was the Pat 01?
The lightest one.
The light.
Lightest gray, the lightest gray shade, like 256 or whatever that is. Okay. We've got well, let me open this file and then we'll talk about what I just wanted to say. This PC, desktop. Did you get, sorry, totally random thought. I was just thinking Jameson's not, maybe he is here, but did you get your thing printed yesterday?
There was still something on the plate, so we got the file ready, but that's why I popped out. I wanted to see if it was printed. But it's not
Oh,
yet.
okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering if
He should be here today, though, right?
yeah, he lives in Eagle Mountain, so like, if there's any sort of traffic.
And there was a wreck on Bangor this morning.
Was there? That's
So-
probably why he's not here then. That is I was wondering. That's exactly why. Okay, so let's see. We want to go to CAD Common, Arch, and 1310, and I'm going to go to Drawings, and I'm just going to open up my AIA Layers drawing right here, my good old safety, right? There we go. So, and hold on one second. Let's open up.
There's one that says elevation. Is it the one?
Maybe that's what I'm looking for. There's another one that has my AIA layers in there and has the layers in there. Let's see. Oh, no, layers, floor plan. This is actually maybe the one I want. Do I have another one called elevations?
Yeah, there's one here.
Let's look. I always think I'm brilliant renaming things and then I forget.
Whoa, Drake. But
Oh, there we go. Oh, see, it's the exact same thing.
oh.
It's good. It's good. There we go. Okay. Although I'm a little concerned. Somebody I think is doing their assignments in CAD Common. You guys, do you see that?
It was probably me. I'm
no.
probably sending my assignments to CAD Common.
That's funny. Kyle Kruger. Does anybody know Kyle Kruger?
Yes, Arch 1310.
Do you know him?
No.
Oh,
Their
so
names, title block.
a few people. Bustin.
That's funny.
Huh.
Dale.
Yeah, I might need to vet this a little bit here and kind of delete a few things because,
Jackson, W block. There's a lot in there.
yeah.
Huh.
Interesting. Huh.
I do that a lot though. I'll save something on my laptop and I won't pay attention to where it goes.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I'll go look for it. Okay.
Like, well, where did it go?
What did I do with it?
Yeah, yeah. That's funny. Okay, I'm gonna have to probably. Interesting. Okay. All right. Okay, so we have our elevation here, and what I was kind of looking for is that we have these layers generated right in here, and I'm going to close this one out. Okay, and I'm just going to save my old one that I had just created my actual layers in. You guys will have it in the file that you need it in.
I just copy and pasted it in my template.
You did?
Like Aaron was saying,
Yeah, copied and pasted what?
the elevation file. So now I have all my layers.
Oh, yes, yes. So you figured that one out.
I did.
Already
That's so
figured.
nice.
Yes.
Have all your things set up when you want.
So there is another trick to that, okay? And I was just going to do it and see if you guys noticed. So if you, obviously, if you copy and paste things back and forth, it inserts, when you're copying and pasting, it's an informal insert, right? So you're inserting those objects into that file, right? And what's good, maybe good or bad about that, depending on your situation, is that you get those, the layers and the associations and the blocks with that object into your new file.
Right.
Great, right? But what's not great about that is always, you don't want to be copying things from files just to get like their layer association or, right? Because you never know kind of what is inherent in a drawing. Because, you could have a virus, you could have some weird block attached to it that could corrupt your file. So don't get into the habit of kind of taking objects and copying them to and from files to get their layers, right? What you really want to do is keep your template up to date and then use your template, right? But if you do run into the situation where you didn't start with your template file, right? But you want a lot of the settings in your template file, there's another way of going about it. You can do an insert. So I for insert, enter, and I can browse out, and for example, I can find like my layers file, that file I just created with the elevation layers. I saved it with the name layers. I can click on it, hit open, okay, click and insert it, and it brought all of the kind of inherent things in it, like settings, right? It didn't bring in like my page setups. Well, let's actually, maybe it didn't insert them, but maybe it brought in the definitions. Although I don't know if I have any definitions. Let's look. Page setup manager. It may have actually, yeah. So it didn't create new tabs or anything, but all of my definitions in my template file have been brought in, right? So if you have to start with a file, or somebody gives you a file and you think, oh, I really want to, work with this, but I love that in my template I have my dimensions set up, I have my text, I've got my layers, I've got my, my tab set up. So, well, I'm just going to copy everything over, right? So instead of you taking their file and maybe copying it into yours, and you don't know if they have integrity, you can take yours and insert it into theirs and move that direction instead. Okay.
Is there a way,
Side
if you
note,
get
right?
a drawing like in my template, my walls are red. Is there any way to transfer it over and then assign those, make the colors change?
It's not going to override. It's just going to bring information in. Okay. And so you could bring your template in and your walls are red, and then you just have to change the walls to red. Okay. But an easy way of doing that is you could do an isolate. Okay, so we've got the good old lay ISO, and it is, sorry, it's one of these, this one right here. I just have it set on my keyboard to be II. So lay ISO will allow you to isolate a specific layer. So if you go in and you bring in your layer system and you, number one, you could just change their AWOL layer to red, right? And that would change it all. But if you wanted to change it to your layer for whatever reason, you could click on isolate, click on the object you want to isolate, like maybe both of those layers, right? Hit enter, and it isolates them, right? So then you can grab them all at the same time, and you could, in one move, change them to exterior wall. And then you can click on this little guy right here, thaw all layers, and it, or actually this one right here, sorry, unisolate, and it will bring all of them back. Okay. All right, so we have our floor plan here. Let's, what we're going to do today is we're going to draw an elevation using this floor plan. Okay, so we kind of hopefully understand the idea that, for elevations, you're going to be using these elevation layers. You won't be using the regular architectural layers, right? We're not going to be grouping things according to architectural element because, if I have a window or a door here and I have a door here, they need to read different pen weights. This needs to be very heavy, this needs to be very thin, and we can't do that by putting them on the same layer, okay? All right. So let's draw an elevation. I'm going to delete a few of these dimensions. I could have turned them off or frozen them also. There we go. But I just want to get rid of them. Okay. If you look in your book, the creating elevations using the ray command, there's a really good graphic there of sort of how you're going to start creating an elevation, okay? You're going to use a floor plan, or, you know, if you were drawing an interior elevation, you would use an interior space, right, to draw your elevation. So we're going to use our floor plan to help us determine where all of the architectural elements are on our elevation, okay? And that way we don't have to measure, and everything that is worked out on this elevation will lie exactly where it needs to everything on that floor plan lies exactly where it needs to, and so when I translate that to an elevation, everything is exactly where it needs to be, okay? One really helpful tool in generating elevations is the X-line command or the ray command. If you use your little drop-down menu, draw menu right here, and I click, okay, I have this X-line or construction line command right here, okay, and I also have my ray command, and I use these all the time. The X-line command, click, this will allow you to generate an infinitely long line, okay, in both directions. So I click and it moves in both directions. I can turn my ortho on, and it'll snap horizontal or vertical, okay. You'll also notice that when I initiate the command, I can specify it to be horizontal, vertical, or angled, okay. So horizontal, only horizontal, right? Vertical, only vertical. Angled will allow you to specify 2 points like that and create an angular construction line or X-line. There's also ray. Ray will allow you to click and create an infinitely long line in one direction. So X-line is in 2 directions, ray is in 1 direction. Click, okay? Right. What's really nice about rays and X-lines is that they're easy to differentiate from normal geometry, right? That's why we use them to create elevations and different things like that. If I were to come in here and use the line tool, you know, how do I determine, you know, if this little short piece of line should have been drawn, you know, maybe it was moved from the floor plan, or maybe, you know, it was meant for something else in the floor plan, or maybe it got moved or whatever. But when I have little short segments of line, I start to question, did I draw that? Did I move it? Where did it come from? But when I use like X-line or ray to generate geometry, I can really tell, oh, that's a ray, that's an X-line. It's meant to help me construct my elevations, okay? All right, so I'm gonna delete that. I am going to, I wanna start generating my elevation. Before we do that, why don't you look in your book on page, for me at least, it is page 2-59, and it shows that house, the exterior elevation, and on the facing page it has all the dimensions of the house. You guys see that? It has a title block around the house, and okay. All right, so another thing we need to know about generating elevations is, you know, first of all, we're going to use our floor plan to help generate it, right? And that will show us where everything is in floor plan location. It will locate it in the floor plan. But we're also going to need to know some heights of things, right? And so if I look at this exterior elevation on that assignment page, I can look at it and say, okay, well, there's a little like foundation that's 2 feet tall, and I have a wainscot that is 3 feet tall, and I have, you know, a field of some type of material that's 5 feet tall, right? All these dimensions are on the right side of that house. I have a little fascia board that's 6 inches, and I have a roof that is 4 foot 6 inches, right? I look over on the left-hand side, and I can see that that garage door is 8 feet tall, and there's a roof overhang of 1 foot, right? And it looks like the roof slope, if you look at just above the garage door, up at the roof line, there's a 12.6, right? Or 6.12, I guess. I should have said it right the first time. But that shows the roof slope. It means that it rises 6 inches for every 12 inches of run, okay? And I'll show you how to draw that. And then we have a little circle right there, the little vent, gable vent right there that has a 6-inch radius, okay? I think you can look at this and you can assume or gather a lot more information about it just looking at it. So I have all the vertical heights on the side, right? But I look at it and I say, well, how tall is the door? Well, 6'8", 7 foot tall, good sized door. And if I look at it, I have a 5 foot dimension for maybe the stucco pattern and 3 feet for the wainscot, right? So that's 8 feet. If I look at the door, it looks like about a foot down from that top line, right? So it's probably a 7 foot door. I look at the windows and I see that the windows line up with the door, right? And that the sill of the windows rests right on top of the wainscot here, right? So I can look at this and kind of, without having any other dimensions, kind of determine where everything is. 5. We were talking about that this morning. Yeah.
These are A students.
They are A students. There you go. It's just so early, Kevin.
Yeah, but they're here.
I'm teasing. I know. It's good.
Hey, we got them rolling, and some of them have chosen to work on the other projects.
Oh, the houses?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
good.
like Anna's better. It's got more design. Oh, I like
Yeah.
Ryan. We'll do Ryan's.
Oh, good. Good.
We'll have a mix of things.
Yeah.
They're
So
not happy about the 4 feet, but I said, if you want to terrace a landscape, they won't build it that way, but you can terrace.
they're in 2510. We're designing the project house in Kevin's graphics class or rendering class. They're rendering it, so
Right.
we'll have some images of it.
And some have decided that they would rather design than render someone else's stuff.
Well, go figure, right?
And I go,
A class
there
of
you go.
designers.
That tells you don't want to be a renderer then.
Right.
I don't like this one. I don't like that. And I'm like, okay.
Do what you will.
There'll be some slight
That's
feature
all right.
changes, which is okay. Wasn't Chad doing some of that too anyway?
Slight, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just a few things.
I said slight, and
That's okay. Maybe they have a better
Samantha
idea.
goes, no, you do not change anything. It comes from the designer. You respect that, right?
That's too funny. Oh boy. That's funny. Okay. So, there's a lot of things that we can kind of determine from that maybe don't have dimensions that we can look at and figure out, right? So, part of your job will be to draw it. Part of your job will be figure out a ton of stuff, right? You get to the point where, honestly, if you have one dimension on an entire floor plan, you'll be able to figure everything else out, funny enough, right? Or drawing elevations. In the real world, you'll be counting bricks or, which have, I'm out there counting how tall, but you'll figure out ways to kind of get heights on different things. But essentially, you're going to need to have a floor plan, and you're going to need to have some vertical elevations to get these exterior elevations drawn, okay? All right, so let's look at this and start drawing. This elevation on page 2-59 is the same one that is on, it's this south side, right, of the project here, okay? Now, one kind of weird thing about elevations when you're drawing them is that we have a north, a south, an east, and a west elevation, okay? And I talked about this just recently with the class, maybe in Revit. Anyway, this is the north side of the house, obviously east, south, and this is the west side of the house, okay? So when I'm looking at this, this elevation, right, this is the south elevation. And it's the south elevation, even though as a little person standing right here looking at it, I'm kind of viewing it northward, right? Don't get confused on the idea that I'm standing here looking north, so it's the north elevation. It's on the south side of the building, so it's the southern elevation, okay? So here's our south elevation, and let's start drawing it. I'll talk, and I'll just talk as I draw this, and I'll, kind of tell you how I go about it. One thing that I like to do as I draw elevations is I like to also create a new layer, and I like to call it my work layer. And you'll see these in most AutoCAD drawings, but my work layer is just going to be a layer that I create that is a weird color, like one of these colors up here, like pink or something, right? That nobody would ever really draw on that layer color. And so visually, I will draw most of my elevations on that work layer, and then I'll change them to their correct pen weights after the fact. And I do that so that I can tell that those are construction lines, that I'm using them to draw the elevation. And then once I'm done, I change them to the correct layer.
We should just make it unprintable just right off the bat, so you never have to worry about it.
You could do that.
or
Yeah, you could totally do that. That way, if you leave something mistakenly, then
you'll
it doesn't
have a weird
print.
thing show up on your.
Yeah, yep, you could totally do that. All right, so first thing I like to do in drawing an elevation, I like to establish well, there's two things you could do. You could either establish your vertical datums or establish kind of where things are in your house. And so I'm just going to, for sake of making it easy, we're going to establish where items are on our house. So to do that, I'm going to go up to Draw, and I'm going to choose my X line, and I want it to be vertical. So I click on vertical, and I have this vertical purple line, and I'm going to mark every pertinent exterior thing on that bottom south face of that house, right? So the outside of the wall, click. Where the garage door starts, click. Where the garage door ends, click. Where this window starts and stops, click, click. Where the door starts and stops, click, click. Where this window, click, starts and stops, and then click where that edge ends. So now I know where all of those architectural elements are. Okay, so great, I know where all of those elements are. Now I need to establish where all of the vertical elements on this home are, right? So if a good way of kind of starting this drawing would be at the ground line, okay? So if I'm looking at my house on in our booklet, I would then again start my X line command. I'm going to do some horizontal lines this time. And I need to establish my very first horizontal line. I don't want to get too close to my elevation because I'm going to be starting at the ground plane and offsetting up to create my height, right? I want to stay close enough to the bottom of this house so that I can look at it and get information from it, but not too close where, you know, my elevation is going to run into it. So I'm going to come down here a good distance and click and place my ground line. So this line right here will be 0.0, right? The ground line on my house. I'm going to then use the offset command, offset, enter, and I'm just going to start offsetting distances. Like this house, I look at it, I have a 2-foot foundation, I have a 3-foot wainscot, I have a 5-foot, you know, we'll call it stucco, 6-inch fascia, and then a 4-foot 6-inch roof line. So I'm just going to hit all of those height markers. So I type offset, and I'm going to type 2-foot, enter, click, click, escape. I'm going to hit enter to reinitiate the offset command, enter. I want to offset 3-foot, enter, click, click. And then we have 5-foot, 5-foot, enter, click, click. And then we have 6 inches, offset, enter 6 inches. And then I have my roof, which is 4'6", so 4'6", enter, click, click. All right, so we have just a gigantic mess of lines, right? And really now, I'm gonna start somewhat trimming and extending and cleaning up all of this grid of lines to make it look like a house, okay?
Question.
Yep.
I can't get my ray to just go like you renew it.
To do horizontal or vertical?
It'll go either or, but it won't. So I got ray. I'm gonna click here.
Click. Move the direction you want to go. Click again.
And it wants to come back up here like this.
Okay, now you hit escape
Oh,
and start the command again.
nice.
I was using X line too. X line is a little bit not easier, it's just different. It goes both directions.
Oh, I
But you
see.
can use your X line.
Okay, gotcha.
There you go. Okay. One thing that I didn't include kind of on these little markers for the house is that now that I look at the house, I have a 1-foot overhang on the roof, right? And I didn't really include that in my scheme here. So I'm going to include that now, right? So offset, 1 foot, enter. Click, 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 and there's my little roof offset. Okay. So this is my work layer, right? Few little things to make this easier. I don't always change, like you're seeing here. I don't always, create things with the correct layer first, right? But the color on the screen here really helps kind of guide me through generating this elevation. And so once I have something that I know is maybe going to be a certain line weight, sometimes I'll just change it immediately. So this one's going to be heavy. And then I know, hey, that is my ground line, right? So my ground line is going to be heavy, and probably the outline of my house will be heavy. So this line and that line will be heavy. And that just kind of visually gives me a cue as to where the house starts and stops, right? And it tells me this is the overhang, and I don't get confused in my drawing, okay? All right, so here's my ground line. Here's the edge of my house, and I'm going to start, I think I might start with the roof. I might trim and create the edge of the roof. And I know that the roof goes from the bottom of this fascia, so there's the fascia line, right? And it goes all the way up to the top of that root ridge line. And I know that it kind of squares off here, so I'm going to do, you could do trim, TR, enter, trim these lines off, but a better command would be fillet with a 0 radius. F for fillet, enter, make sure my radius is 0, click, click. And I have that top kind of right corner of my roof. And I know this is the bottom, so F for fillet, click, click. And I have my little roof. But I've got this line extending past the edge, so I'm just going to trim. TR, enter. There you go. Oh, look at that. It's a roof. I'm going to come over here. Same thing. F for fillet. I know that's my overhang and the edge of my roof line. Click, click. Enter, fillet again, click, click. And the same thing happens. I have a little left over, so I'm going to trim. TR, enter. Okay. Now I look at the edge of my house here, and I know that this line really doesn't extend past this edge here, right? So TR, enter. I'm going to start trimming off the pieces that I know I don't need. Okay. TR, enter, and I'll just start trimming things off that I know, like this is the wainscot area. Those lines don't extend past the edge. And really none of these kind of extend past the ground line, right? So I trim all those off. TR, enter, trim. Okay. Now I'm going to start really kind of constructing this side of the house. So I know this is a window, and I know that the window sits here, and I'm looking at the image of my house over here on the side, right? And I'm seeing I've got a wainscot under the window, so this is wainscot goes from here all the way over to here, and then the door interrupts it. TR, enter. So I'm going to start trimming. It doesn't go into the foundation, so I trim those lines off. Those don't need to be there. So I start seeing my window formed. But this is a door, so TR, enter. So I'm going to trim out that piece where my door will live. Then my wainscot starts again and goes all the way over here until the garage starts. We don't really know where the garage starts though, right? I'm looking at this thinking, we'll figure that out in a minute. Okay, so I come over here to my window. There's my window. TR, enter. And I'm going to trim off those couple lines. And in fact, I should have just grabbed those. Delete. Oh, I don't need that. Down below here, TR, enter. There you go. So I have my foundation, right? And I have my wainscot, window, door. None of these lines extend past this, right? But in actuality, none of these lines that are kind of hitting the plan anymore, or the plan, they don't extend past the top of these elements, and like the top of the window, the top of the door, and the top of this window. And again, from looking at the elevation, I can see that field of wall from the bottom of the wainscot to the top of the edge of the roof is going to be 8 feet. So, and that's this line. So I think I'm going to offset this line about a foot down to get the top of those windows and doors. Offset 1 foot. Click, click. Okay. TR, enter, trim. Trim all those things off, right? I trim off those things. And these lines are really kind of irrelevant at this point because I see my window here, right? door, window, F for fillet. Whatever way that you can most effectively kind of construct these, do it, right? If you like fillet, great. If you like trim, great. If you like extend, great. If you like grabbing this and dragging it back, great. Okay. TR, enter, enter, click, click. It's starting to look like a little house, right? So cute.
When you're trimming and it won't trim off, it won't, trim out a piece. What does that mean?
You just have to delete it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like when I trimmed out all these pieces, there were some left down here.
Yeah.
I couldn't trim them because they weren't being trimmed. They were just pieces existing between two lines. So I have to delete them. Yep. All right, so I get to this point and I somewhat have my house formed, right? There's some detail that I have to generate. But I look at this and I think, okay, time to create the garage and kind of make that definition. And I don't kind of know from looking over here at the elevation, I don't really know where this line is right here, right? But I think a pretty good guess would be that this garage is symmetrical, right? And that if I measure from here to here, which is 2 feet, I'm likely going to have the exact same amount on this side of the garage, okay? So I'm going to offset 2 foot right there. And in fact, that lines up with the front face of that wood wall, the wood frame wall right there. Okay. So here's where that line, the house kind of meets the garage. The garage from the elevation that we are looking at is 8 feet tall, and that's from this ground line. So I could offset 8 foot, enter, click, click, right? I could also have drawn a line 8 feet from this bottom line, but from is initiating a line command, going down, clicking, or from, shift right click, from, moving up, going over, having to extend the line over a tiny bit. Offset is O, enter, 8 foot, enter, click, right? So it's just a lot faster for me to do it that way, right?
Last night.
Did you? Yeah. And it works. It works.
Does.
It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
But I honestly kind of tend to use offset more because it does the same thing, right? You just end up having to delete a piece of geometry, really. So F for fillet, right? Click, click, enter, click, click. What I like about fillet instead of trim and extend is that fillet for sure will give me a squared off closed corner, right? And me thinking ahead thinking, wait a minute, there's a bunch of hatch that I have to put in this drawing. I want to make sure that all of the joints at the corners of my doors and windows and all that good stuff, that they all have exactly closed regions, right? So trim and extend I can't quite trust like I can trust fillet, right? So I use fillet. Trim, TR, enter, enter. I'm going to start back here and start trimming off in succession all those little lines. All right, looks wonderful here, okay? We're getting to a little tricky part, which is going to be the roof, okay? So I have to, at this point, from the bottom of the fascia, we're going to whoop, whoop, right? We're going to make a little gable right there. And that gable doesn't have a dimension on it, but it does have a roof slope on it. And the roof slope is 612. And that means that for every vertical rise of 6 inches, we have 12 inches of run, right? And it creates a diagonal. So the way that we're going to, on the screen, determine our roof slope is we're going to use the line tool. And I'm going to draw a line that is 6 inches tall, 6, enter, over 12, enter. I get this little triangle, right? The hypotenuse is going to be our roof slope, right? So I go to my ray, or I go to my X line again, and I want to do an angular line. Click, click, right? You see that? And now I have that roof slope defined, right? And you're looking at like, where kind of does it go? I know that it starts right here, right? So I click there and I hit escape. So I know that from this point, right, it kind of starts to slope up. And I know that it's symmetrical about this door, right? So I know that I could mirror this. MI, mirror, select this, click, enter, and I can choose my mirror line across the middle of that door. Okay. Another thing I could have done is I could have drawn this the opposite direction. L for line, up 6 over 12. All right, come up to X line, angular, and I could have created another line over here, right? And that one is going to go from this point and meet that other line, right? M for move, or I should have just defined it, and it looks like that. And if I kind of want to check myself, it does bisect that, right? So it is a midpoint. All right, so we have this lots of lines again. F for fillet, click, click. Got my wonderful gable, okay. I'm gonna trim out these lines here. The reason I maybe wouldn't fillet this immediately is if I fillet this, watch what'll happen. Click. Do you see how it will get rid of that little not that that's a big deal to draw that extra little tiny line, right? But you know, yeah, still, it's kind of like if I just trim these out and then I filleted the edges, which I'd have to do anyway, then I don't have to redo work, right? So TR, enter, enter, trim those out. F for fillet, click, click, enter, click, click. Okay, and now I've got my gable, and now I have to create the little, you know, the trim around it. And that was 6 inches, so O for offset, 6 inches, click, click, oop, click, 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 click. F for fillet. I'm hitting enter in between my commands, right? There you go. Looks pretty good. I need to trim that off. TR, enter, enter, trim, trim. Oop, uh-oh, too far. Trim, trim. There we go. Trim, trim. There we go. Okay. All right. So now we have kind of the framework behind our house generated, right? Looks pretty good. Not too bad to generate, right? Now it's time to add the detail, and I could start changing my pen weights, right? So heavy, medium, light. You know, the general outline. Oh, there he is. Did you run into the accident, Jameson?
What?
Did you run into the accident?
No.
Oh, okay.
I was at the ATC.
Oh, we were.
I guess Scott had a seizure on Monday or something, so
Oh, that's awful.
I was over there doing some stuff for him.
Ooh, that's terrible. We were thinking maybe you got caught in the accident on Bangerter.
I don't think we either.
Oh.
Ever.
I'm done with that road.
Me and that road, we're not cool anymore.
Well, I'll take the bit from I-15 to Redwood.
Yeah.
So that's how I get home.
There
But
you go.
other than that,
No.
that road can suck it.
Tell us how you really feel. Tell us how you really feel.
I'll take State Street as far as I can, and then take I-80 and avoid
That's too funny.
the Bangor altogether.
The Bangerter. We'll call it the Bangerter.
Banger.
The Bangerter. All right, so we look at our line weights, and the general outline of our building will be the heaviest, and as well as the ground line. Okay, those are going to be kind of the 3 elements that are the heaviest. So MA, match properties, because I've already defined these as heavy, right? I can kind of grab the outline of things, which will, you know, and there's give and take. You're like, well, this maybe roof is not exactly an outline, but it kind of defines the edge of that roof, and so it somewhat is an outline, right? And then the garage door is somewhat, you know, kind of contained within that. The garage door could be maybe a medium pen weight. You know, I did it, I got a little excited about the, you know, heavy outline, and maybe shouldn't have done the outline of the garage door, right? But the outline of the general building is heavy, and so will the ground line will also be that heavy weight. I've got that's weird. Why would it do 3 little lines right there? Or grips. Interesting. Anyway, so the outline, and I could probably include very important architectural elements in that. So maybe like this foundation line, you know, is pretty important, so I give it a red color. Okay. Now you're going to have a lot of detail. This is going to be an assignment, and I want you to have some practice with an elevation before you actually have to generate one for your final project. So you'll do this assignment. We'll have it due early next week. But I want you to create all of the detail you see on, in the assignment page. So you'll have, this little guy will be offset, and you'll have 4 little windows, and you'll have these sectioned, right? Divide would be a good command to use to divide this line up to get this sectional on the door, right? You're going to draw lines to generate your windows. Let's do one window so I can show you something. But other than that, I'm kind of coming through here. Maybe, the door and the window outlines, these are all kind of a medium, because they're architectural elements. The door outline, the window outline, and maybe the garage door outline, those are medium elements. So the outline of the roof and the building, heavy. We also have medium, okay? The wainscot sill, I think that could be a medium or a light, right? Depending on what you think, but I might tend to make it kind of a medium. And then light colors will be things like details. So, as I'm drawing, I'm gonna offset this. As I'm drawing this window, I'm not gonna clean anything up, but I draw this, that's not true, I will clean it up. Right, I'm offsetting and I'm filleting. Oop. Right. The frame the outline of the frame is heavy or medium, but then maybe when I get to the muntins or the mullions, right, I maybe make those like a light colored, right? L for line, and I start drawing these lighter, right? So as you get into more detail, the finer the lines you want to use, just like you look at this elevation, right? So the outline of the windows is kind of a medium weight. Maybe the muntins, they might be the same as the window. It might be nicer to have them a slightly lighter line than the window. And then what they've done here with the windows, I'm making this M2P. Right, there we go. They've hatched these windows solid. Okay, so we've gone to a pattern layer. We'll go to pattern 01, which is the lightest pattern. And we've hatched. So BH, boundary hatch, or you could come up to our hatch command. Solid hatch, click, 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 and there's our hatch. Okay. So what does that look like? And I want to show you what it looks like in terms of me choosing the gray shade solid line weight as opposed to like a light line weight. I'm going to do another hatch. But instead of being that pattern 01 for my layer, I'm going to change it to heavy, light, medium. There it is, light. Okay. Of course, I'm just going to go into paper space, and I'm going to right click, and I want to apply landscape PDF, set current, close. I'm going to set up my pages here. Looks good, right? Click, click. It's still a little messy, right? But we get the general idea of what this is going to look like. Control P, print, and I'm going to do a preview. Okay. So I think the general, and this is on an 8.5 by 11, so it's really small, right? But the general outline of the house looks pretty good. It's thick, and that's fine. We have the medium pen weight for the windows, which is good. So if we do a thin pen weight for like these little windows on the door and the little segments on the door and the little vent, that's great, right? Here is what happens when you create a solid hatch on your facade here, and you apply like a red or a magenta or a blue color to the hatch. It prints black, okay? And this, which is correct, is what we want to see, and that is what happens when you apply a gray tone color to your hatch, okay? So if your hatch, if you create the brick and it's very thick and you don't like it, apply a gray tone to it to tone it down, okay? What I mean by that, just to make sure everybody's clear, is that when I look at these colors, right, these colors here for a hatch, 1 through 9, will always print black, okay? These colors down here will always print gray tone. Okay. What's really nice about AutoCAD, this is one of the arguments that a lot of people have, like, hey, we only use AutoCAD because of the graphic quality of AutoCAD, because it's highly controllable, right? So I can very easily change the line weights, visually look at it and say, oh, I don't like the way that looks, change it to another color. Okay, that's the way I want it to look, right? And it's highly editable. And it allows for a large assortment of pen weights, right? Revit does allow that, but it's a little bit more in depth controlling it, so it's more, it's not as easy as just changing a layer color, right? You have to go into some of the properties and change the line weights in a table, and it's all the line weights are set by like 0.004 millimeters, right? So, yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's harder to control, so you just don't do it, honestly, right? Another thing that's really nice in AutoCAD is that I can draw things very easily in perspective, meaning things that are closest to me are heavy and things that are furthest away from me are light, right? And in Revit, except for, I think 2018 has started doing this, there was no perspective view, like graphically in Revit for a long time. And so that's another, when people say, oh, we don't like Revit, the drawings look terrible, it's because of this kind of thing that they say that, essentially. All right, so this is an exterior elevation, and I'm going to have you draw an exterior elevation over the next few days, right? You know, as we're assigning our final project. I do want to show you how to do an interior elevation. I won't draw the whole thing again, but there are a couple specific things I want to show you about an interior elevation. The interior elevation I'm going to be looking at is on the next page. So if you turn the page from the elevation we were drawing, right, we see the interior elevation. Do you guys have any questions about this before we move on to the interior one? Nope. Okay. So I'm just going to grab this and I'm going to copy it. Copy. Okay. And I just want to draw this interior space here, right? I want to draw the kitchen right here. And so I don't need any of this other stuff over here, right? So I could trim it off and delete it, and you know, we're really just using this floor plan as a template to draw our elevations in this file, right? So I don't really need to maintain its integrity. I mean, I want the dimensions correct, but I don't really need to have all of this other junk around it, right? Number one. So you will see me trim TR. I'm going to select my cutting edge here, enter. I'm just going to start kind of trimming off all this junk I don't need. Oops. And establishing the boundary for my elevation. Okay. So this is the elevation I want to draw. I need to, it's the wrong orientation though, so I need to rotate it so that it's, you know, I'm looking at this stove because that's what I really want to draw. One really big piece of advice that I hope you remember when you go and work professionally is that when you need to generate, like for example, if I generate this elevation, you know, I'm done. Now it's time for me to generate this elevation, right? And then when I'm done with that, maybe I want to do this elevation over here, right? When you are copying your floor plan about to generate elevations, make sure that you rotate it and you don't mirror it, right? So if I want to do the front elevation and then the back elevation, don't mirror it, right? Don't just say, oh.
That is bad.
Yeah. Totally rookie mistake. Funny enough, people do it all the time. People do it all the time. But, you know, you think, oh, it's the same stuff. It's opposite, or it's, you know, and it's not normally a big deal until you send out a set of drawings and somebody's drawn a backwards or mirrored elevation. And I'm sure, you know, out on the job site, everybody gets a good laugh on with that, right?
Hey, how did you do that trim thing where you did the box and then you chose
that? With that one, I did TR. Instead of hitting enter, I went the long route. So my cutting edge was this box, click, enter, and then I was able to trim around it.
Okay.
So you drew the box and then trimmed it up.
Yep. You remember how you can do the long route of trim and the quick version of trim? I went the long route.
Okay.
Yep. All right, so RO, rotate, click. I'm going to rotate it down, and then one more time, click. So don't mirror it, you know, always rotate it. And I want to draw this elevation. So again, you know, I'm doing the exact same thing that I did with, you know, this other elevation that I drew. I'm situating my floor plan so that I can use it to measure things, right? And then I'm going to start drawing X lines or rays or whatever to start generating my geometry. So I come up to draw X line, and I start indicating click, click, right, where these things are happening. Okay, and if I look at my elevation, right, we have an 8-foot tall wall. One thing Jeff drew this elevation. I don't really like that he hatched the cut on the walls. I don't think that's very typical at all, actually. So I would say just draw the inside line where the, like if we're looking here, the wall ends. We don't extend it further out and show a cut wall line, okay? But this looks pretty good. I do agree with, he did show the millwork is cut. That's pretty, typical. So the millwork being cut here. I'm going to draw a line just right here to kind of indicate what I'm drawing, right? I'm drawing this right here, okay? So everything starting from here, I'm drawing over, and I'm actually cutting through that countertop and drawing everything I see here. Right? This seems really silly to do, but elevations can get a little tricky. So I feel like, if you have to do a little drawing aid to say, hey, remember, this is what you're drawing, if it's helpful, do it, right? It's also helpful, honestly, when people come back and get in your drawings and they're like, oh yeah, she drew it like this and it's looking that direction. That totally makes sense. All right, so I'm going to create another X line, and I'm going to establish my horizontal datum. So we start at 0, right? I'm going to offset 5 inches. I'm just looking at my interior elevation on my assignment page here, and then I'm going to offset, enter 8 foot, click, click. Oh, that was actually, I did it wrong. 8 foot, and it's from the ground line. There we go. Okay, so I've got, my stove here, I've got cabinets, I've got, let's say maybe the refrigerator. Let's say the fridge is maybe right here. We'll squeeze it in there. But that's where it'll be, okay? All right, so now again, I'm just gonna do exactly what I did with my other elevation. I've got my floor line established, TR, enter, enter, so I'm gonna trim off those. I've got my upper boundary established, so I trim off those. Now I need to maybe start defining elements kind of within this elevation, like how tall is the counter? How tall is that gap between the gas range where the tile backsplash is, right? How tall are those uppers? So I'm gonna O for offset, 2 foot 10.5 inches. That's the top of the bottom of the countertop. O for offset, 1.5 inches. That's the thickness of the counter. And then we have offset 1 foot 6 inches, right? So I have that. And then offset again 3 feet. There's another 3 feet, and I start to see my millwork happening, right? We just have kind of a little dust collecting shelf up on top here, right? Should just brought the millwork all the way to the ceiling at that point. All right. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I can TR, enter, enter, and I can trim off some of this garbage I don't need here, right? My elevation's a little different in what has been chosen, right? But the refrigerator is essentially over here, and then we have, we've got the gas range in the middle, so we'll put our gas range in the middle here, and then this will be millwork, millwork, and we'll put our refrigerator on this edge. Hello. All right. So, and I'm not going to go through it all, but let me just give you a little hint here. A lot of the stuff in this elevation is already drawn, and you don't have to draw it, okay? So the gas range, the refrigerator, the microwave, those are all blocks in the design center, okay? So if you type AD center, remember this? Remember, let's see, is it home space planner, maybe? Nope. Oh no. I hate it when you get out of this and it's like, you guys probably know at this point. Let's see, nope, kitchens. Okay, drag it over, click, enter, enter, enter. There's my fridge. I'm gonna explode this, X, enter. There's my fridge. it's a block. There is my microwave in elevation view, right? There is my little stove. There's, look, it's, well, I was gonna say there's an outlet, but every semester I almost say, oh look, and we have a little outlet. And last semester, maybe it was Bon. Where did Bon go? Hello. I was like, do you know what this is?
Right?
Because she's really young. Well, you know, it was just kind of funny. I'm feeling like an old lady now. There's our little phone jack for our kitchen phone that goes on the wall, right? Maybe, what's that?
That nobody has.
That nobody has, that we take off, yeah. So here are all of our blocks, right? So I could grab this stove, M for move, right? And I could grab the midpoint. My elevation is slightly off, but you guys get the idea, right? So you could drop your stove right there, right? I'm gonna just stretch my elevation to make it work. There we go. Okay, there's our little stove, and I could trim out the countertop there, right? TR, enter, enter. Trim out my little stuff there. Okay. Oops. There we go. So I've got my little stove. All right, and the microwave goes above it. So I've got my microwave here, copy, CO, and my microwave goes up in this space. And it's narrower than my stovetop, so I'm just going to center it about that space. So M for move. We want the midpoint. Shift right click, M2P, and it centers it. And I could M move it down, right? The hard part is centering it. Moving it down is easy. So, you know, I center it, get it where it needs to be, and then, you know, move on. All right, TR, enter, enter. I'm going to trim out these, you know, pieces. There's my tile backsplash. That'll be hatch, okay? And when I create my line work for my cabinets, right, we're going to have a little tiny cabinet here. Trim, trim. Okay. We're going to have a cabinet up here, and we're going to have a cabinet here and here, right? If we wanted to put our fridge in here, we could. M for move. Our fridge maybe just goes right there, right? And then we have maybe a cabinet above that. I'm just kind of faking this little, sorry guys, it's not, but you guys get the idea. So how do we then, you know, generate the swings on the cabinets, right? Those dashed lines. I forgot one layer in here. We're going to add a-eliv-hidden, H-I-D-N, okay? And that is going to be kind of a lighter pen weight, like maybe a 7 or an 8. Okay, and to make it dashed, we're going to change the line weight, of course, to, or sorry, whoops, the line type to a hidden line type. So load, hopefully you guys are getting pretty used to this by now. Hidden, okay, click, okay, and we have a hidden line weight associated. Okay, so now L for line, I'm drawing kind of M2P, click, click, there we go, click, right? I'm just kind of using the geometry available to kind of help draw, right? I'm not measuring anything. You guys will get pretty quick at that, right? You guys will find yourselves never wanting to measure anything. I just want to use what's around me to guide my design, right? I don't want to measure anything. M2P, click, click. There we go, right? Let's change this cabinet a little. Maybe we'll make that a little tiny narrow one. Before M2P, this task was a lot worse. Trying to find that midpoint right there.
I have a question. So the ones that, like, they're opening like this, the narrower part, that's the closing?
This is the hinge.
That's the part that is connected to the cabinet, right? The other side is where you open it.
Yeah. So this right here, if it comes like this, right? The narrow point is the hinge.
Okay.
So the hinge side would be here. The hinge side would be here. The handles, that would mean the handles are in the center, and you open them like that. Okay. Yep. Okay, L for line, right? We've got a couple more of these. M2P. This is really gonna, like, honestly, this kind of stuff where you have to find midpoints and offset and trim and extend and fillet and measure off of floor plans and bring in blocks, like, this is kind of an intense exercise, right? But this is what's going to really kind of help you get fast at AutoCAD. Click, 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 right? And I prefer to click. I prefer to have one hand on the keyboard. Yep. Oh, yes. Let's see, you, 1, 2. Is that you? Yeah? Okay. All right. So now I've got a lot of things drawn, right? I would hatch in my tile backsplash. I would make that a gray shade. One thing to know, I would always do my hatch and dimensions very last, right? So, you know, you get excited because hatch is so easy and it's kind of fun to do. Do it last though, because you'll end up deleting it and having to redo it because you need to adjust something. But do your hatch last, do your text last. You know, you have this elevation that you're going to generate also. So you'll generate an interior elevation and the exterior elevation for practice. And then in your final, you'll have 2 of those. I'm going to come in here and just, because we have these hidden line weights, I just want to remind you of something, right? I'm going to now assign my line weights to this elevation. So I've been working on my, quote, work layer. There's my hidden line type, right? MA, match properties. Click. I get 1 or 2 elements with the line weight I want, and then I match everything else, right? The outer outline, the outer boundary, the outline of my elevation will always be the thickest pen weight. So again, I take the outer boundary and the floor line, right? And I change that to my heavy. Okay, medium. Okay, medium, probably my cabinets, right? We have, those are kind of secondary architectural elements. So I start grabbing all those. Medium. Right, MA, match properties. Now I have a medium established. I can kind of, you know, come in and very nicely start grabbing the rest. Okay, and then probably a light would be maybe the appliances. So we'll do a light. So heavy outline, medium, cabinets, light, appliances. And they're already white, but okay. Then either the fine or more than what would be better would be a pattern. You know, the pattern for the backsplash. And that backsplash is a user-defined hatch. It's the doubled, sorry, I'm trying to remember what they call it. It's user-defined and it's doubled right here, right? So it's doubled and I have an angle of like 45 degrees. It's bigger than that. It's not like 2 by 2, it's probably like 4 by 4. And it went up into there, so I'd have to probably draw a line across here and not let that happen, right? I'm gonna move it out. I didn't delete it, right? I didn't delete it. I made a mistake with it, but I didn't delete it because now I'm gonna hatch again and MA, match properties, click, click. Oh, isn't that nice? I don't have to go through the hatch command. I don't have to find all the, you know, the settings that I had gotten correct on this set. Delete that out. Grab this, change it to, change the layer to pattern 01. Okay, and I go to my, there we go, we've got my elevation here. Control P, right, print, preview it. Pretty good. Oh, I might need to draw a line here. Where am I?
I was wondering about, would you do your
yeah.
full border line?
Yeah, yeah. But not bad, right? So I've got my heavy, I've got my medium, looks good. I've got my light lines, and then my dashed lines look pretty good. Remember that if your dashed lines don't show up, LT scale, right? My LT scale will be half the scale factor. So it's set to 15 right now, but you know, if I made it, if this was a ½ inch, I could make it 12, and it would, you know, ½ inch scale factor is 24, half the scale factor is 12, and so that would make it dashed, right? Okay, Any questions so far in elevations? Not really any new commands, right? Just kind of drawing techniques, how to generate drawings. These are pretty fun. They go pretty fast. And I feel like this kind of drawing really kind of sharpens your speed on AutoCAD. So I think that's pretty good. So I'll assign those 2 elevations for an assignment they'll be due early next week, so that I don't want you spending too much time in your final assignment time working on these. But I do want you to get exposure to this before we do the finals, so if you have questions, then, you know, we can answer them. All right. I'm gonna save this actually. Save it on my, I can't. File, save as, desktop, AutoCAD. Before I unlink, I'm gonna go to Canvas really quick. Okay, and I want to just show you some events that are coming up for the Architecture Club, and there are a couple of extra credit events you can go to. Oh, I need to go to the calendar. Okay, so today is the 9th. Oh, come on, there we go. So tomorrow there is a lecture at the University of Utah at 4 o'clock, so I'll count that. If you want to go to that, you can use that as an extra credit assignment. Pachakacha night is tomorrow. I didn't realize it was coming up so quickly, but I will be there. The doors open at 7. The presentations start at 8. So it's at the stateroom. So Bon can't go because she's not 21 yet. One of these days, Bon, you might barely make it to one before you graduate here, right? If you turn 21 next year, is that right?
2019.
Oh, you're turning 19 this year.
Oh, I'm turning 20.
You're turning 20, so maybe next year, right? So Pachakacha night, Friday night, the stateroom. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. On Tuesday, did we talk about this? Anyway, next Tuesday at 2 o'clock, we're going to be going out to the project house, the one from last year the students designed. We're going to be touring it. I guess they set the trusses yesterday or the day before, so it's moving along, which is really great. And then on Thanksgiving doesn't affect us. I'm going to be canceling my classes on the 22nd. So if you have a class with me on Monday, Wednesday, we're not going to be having that Wednesday before because nobody's ever here. Anyway, let's just be real, right? Nobody's ever here. I'll be here probably, but classes will be canceled. And then on the 29th, Wednesday the 29th, Alyssa Woodbury from Financial Aid is going to come, and she's going to talk about financial aid and scholarships. So what money is available for you, how do you get grants and scholarships, and the best financial aid you can possibly get, right? Okay, that is all. That is all. Oh, nope. There we go.